Okay, well, you got those. Cold. Ooh, chilly headphones. It's like 20, 29, 30 degrees outside right now. I think it's gonna get colder. Woo, hold on. Yeah. There we go. Should be good. Okay, cool. All right, so how are we doing? It's, welcome to Acadia After Dark. I'm Redbeard. It's been a long week. Hopefully, everybody's doing well. Anyways, we had a pretty fun episode earlier in the week. If you've had a chance to check it out, the oldest haunting in Maine. Kept right on with the ghost stuff this week. I think we're gonna take a break from that for a little while because ghost stories are cool and everything like that, but there's definitely more to be said for other stuff because Maine's got a ton of folklore. I really think I could spend a lot of time just talking on that. So next week we're gonna have our first cryptid, which will be fun. I'm looking forward to that. I'm already well into that because well, cryptids are kind of my bag lately. So I'm gonna have quite a bit to say about this one. Anyways, yeah, that episode this week, pretty wild one, and for being an old story, there was definitely a lot of details to it. Actually, considering how old it is and how much of it is verifiable, is kind of debatable because the Historical Society of Sullivan had a lot of information, and there's a lot of books. There's a lot of different takes on the story. I've seen several different books that cover it pretty extensively, and it's a story that you can find different versions of it depending. But there was kind of commonalities, and that's what I tried to cover in the video. Was just the stuff that we already concede is the same from one telling of the story to the other. We had, I mean, the original one, the dates all matched up as 1799, and originally it was one that was like, oh, that's weird. I like that. Some scratching at the window. um, yeah, the original telling of it said that like the whole thing took the pace of a couple of years, and it did. It's just the spacing of it is really weird because it started out basically in early as 1799 as far as like when Nellie Butler supposedly passed away in early of 1799. Then probably about, it wasn't very long at all. It could have only been a few months before her neighbor started hearing the voices. Which that was the crazy thing to me on this whole story is the voices and like how much was heard, how many people heard it. There was reportedly over 100 witnesses. Now 37 of them are confirmable, like that there's like actual testimony to. But there's definitely a lot of instances where it would be like the whole crowd, the 40 people all hanging out outside of the house waiting for it to like make noises or something. And of course, old George definitely seems to have had his own motivations in this whole thing. I'm not gonna pretend like it doesn't seem kind of weird. But the as far as what the spirit was supposedly saying and stuff, there's a lot of ones that were talked about how Lydia supposedly did have like a very strong connection with the spirit, would like talk to it even when people didn't seem to be listening, which I thought that was really interesting. From some of the stories that I could find, there was at least a couple of accounts where they could hear her having a conversation with the spirit, even when there wasn't supposed to be people around or other things. Which, of course, that could have been just, you know, somebody saying that, but definitely seemed kind of weird to me that there were so many people that had so many experiences personal, like hearing the voice, and they all reported the same things. But granted, we're also dealing with 200-year-old superstitious, supernatural hubbub. So you're only going to be able to get so much consistency out of it. And Cummings there, the pastor that documented a lot of this stuff, he did a pretty good job, obviously, for the time of at least talking to people and finding out what they were saying. But the fact that he started out supposedly as a skeptic, and then by the end of it, he was a full-on believer right along with the rest of the town. I think that definitely would go to like the way he documented to it later. He's gonna exaggerate things because he was I don't know what reason he would have to be believing it. It definitely seems odd though, and the fact that they did have the Lydia getting married, and then pretty shortly after getting married, um, passing away when they had their first child. I'm not 100% certain, wasn't able to find if the child did survive or not, which is one thing I'd be interested to know. If anybody has found sources on that, just let me know somewhere. I'm plenty of social media, you can get me. Um, yeah, there was so many weird stories. There were plenty of people that were skeptical of the voices. They had one account where supposedly she appeared as like a flash of light, which I don't know what they're meaning by a flash of light, but honestly, in 1799, there's not that many things that would create a big flash, which is one thing I found interesting. But at the same time, it seemed like there was like a lot of like stuff that simply was just people exaggerating it, and there's so much superstition at that area. It was really hard to take all of it at face value. I think we could see that, just because of the way it started out, and then when it got to like after Nellie actually um stopped just speaking to Lydia, Lydia passed away. I think that was basically when the end of the legitimate haunting part of it may have been, because a lot of the stories after that kind of took on an entirely different, like, bombastic nature, and I don't think that that was unintentional. I think that was very, very much like they were capitalizing on, the story was already like the talk of the town for a couple of years, and it's pretty easy to understand how people get wrapped up in it and then they spin their own yarns, and that's how stories become told. That's how they last 200 years, where we'd be talking about them today. So it's not that big of a surprise to me. Um, didn't have a lot of stuff on Reverend Abraham Cunningham himself. He was, yeah, and some of the reports said he collected testimonies from 100 witnesses. I only confirmed 37. I don't know where the 100 came from. I think people were just assuming like everybody in the town was seeing it, so it's 100 people, and there's just no way to really corroborate that. Even if you see where the location of this whole thing took place in Taunton Point at the time was definitely not an area that 100 people would have just been hanging around. I don't think that was very likely, but maybe if it was something that was spoke of, and it definitely the word was out, there were people coming from several towns away to try and experience it. So yeah, there were probably times that there would be 100 people hanging out there. Now, did 100 people actually see an apparition come out of the basement of this house? I don't think so. I'd be really surprised. It'd be cool if it did. If I could find any reports aside from Abraham Cummingham saying like, yeah, or Cummings saying that, yeah, I traveled to Sullivan, Maine, and I happened to see this. I'd like to read more of those because I wasn't able to find very many of those. Mm, so, mhm. Yeah, so we're gonna move on to some other stuff that I was kind of looking at because we did have the nice pictures. Couldn't find the one. Yeah, that was Taunton Point, and I wanted to include that. That was the first one that I found online from the Historical Society, actually, and I thought that was just a wicked cool picture for this whole thing. Definitely gives you a creepy vibe when you look out across the water out there. And interestingly enough, another story happens to take place directly across from here. On the other side of this lake, there's actually another road where there's another ghost story that takes place that we're going to cover later, but I'm taking a break from the ghost stuff for a while, like I said. So I don't want to overdo that. We're going to shift on over. I had a couple of things I wanted to bring up from the last time that I forgot to mention, and now I'm having a hard time pulling them up. If I can find them, that'd be super cool, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to. Basically, there was a handful of articles I found because it's been election season. And if you live in America, you know how all consuming that can be to most things in life. And it really is all consuming. But we're over the worst of it now, kind of. And there was an article I found, and I'm trying to find the article again now because it was very fun. There was definitely something of interest to everybody because it was a study that was done. And if I can find it, I will. Because I don't know where I put it. There was a study that was done recently by the Friedman. Where was it? Oh, here we go. I might have it. I might have it. Yeah, yeah, here we go. Yeah, so Slate Magazine covered this, and it kind of landed on my radar. So they did an article that was why Kamala Harris should have begun at this point. That's spoiler alert. Week ago, she didn't win, but they said why she must begin hinting that she believes in UFOs, Bigfoot, and the Mothman, and that interestingly leaked into an article that was of a study, and that study I found to be pretty fascinating because it showed a correlation with younger people now believing in cryptids. And I found that to be really cool because I grew up, and when I grew up, I was all about the stuff. I grew up watching X Files. And apparently, millennials as a whole are more accepting than to the idea of UFOs, UAPs, ghosts, Bigfoot, what have you. Okay? So there's an uptick when you get to Gen Z, where they apparently believe more freely in it to the point that it was like almost 40% of them. And one staggering statistic is it was like 1 in 5 people in New Jersey believe in the Jersey Devil, which is pretty funny to me. Just odd offhand thing that they came up with out of the study. But yeah, with Gen Z, it was like almost 40% believe in Bigfoot as an example. And I found that interesting because when you look at it, what's the younger generations like really been exposed to, you know? When I was a kid, I was watching X Files, I was watching horror movies and sci fi stuff and things like that. Gen Z, I don't think has had as much of that. Now, maybe they have, and I'm just not aware of it. I know that there's like certain things nowadays, like we just watched the new episode of Don Don earlier, and that's awesome. It's got cryptids and ghosts and stuff, and that's a great anime. So definitely like that one I can understand it, but I don't know if younger people are into that stuff now. Um, but then there's another side to this because there's a direct correlation between people that are interested in the paranormal and then are then interested in other things such as flat earth theory, such as other conspiracies, like vaccine related conspiracies, what have you. Okay. So there's that. And then that somehow or another also correlates with those people being more tuned in or like online nowadays. On top of that, those same studies were basically able to say that like sure, if you want to approach a younger generation, they're more tuned in. So you would want to approach them with something that they themselves believe in. And apparently we're a little more conspiracy minded as we're younger. Maybe it's because we're raised in, the truth is out there, as they say. I choose to believe that it's that. I think it's the media we consumed as we were growing up. I know for certain that was a big part of it with me. Now, I do believe there's stuff out there for sure. And the way it's been put to me is if there was even if out of the millions of stories, say over the last 20 years, okay, millions of stories of UFOs, UAPs, ghosts, Bigfoot, Chupacabra, yada yada yada, okay, all that stuff. If even one of those is true, and it's harder and harder to prove it nowadays. I've said since we've had the more improvements we made to cameras, the more technology has outpaced what we're able to capture on camera through like CG and things like that, the harder it's ever going to be to prove any of these things with video because anything could be just faked, essentially. Now, if we were to go back to like most people, you could show them almost anything and then they're going to say, okay, unless that's a film copy of like the original film taken on like a reel, they're not going to believe you. Even if you show them a video from your cell phone, any person can just be like, well, that's edited, that's doctored, yada, yada. So we're never going to be able to use that as verifiable proof. That's why I'm seeking to find more proof of things in the scientific nature. I believe that's where we should be going. Video evidence would be wonderful, but even if you show somebody a video of a Bigfoot, there is no way to authenticate that until we have a body, until we have DNA evidence, until we have these other markers, right? Same with UFOs, same with UFPs, same with ghosts. There's going to be more skepticism in coming years because at this point, there's millions of reports, thousands of videos. You go online and we have entire channels like Slapped Ham. I was just watching one of those earlier, and they have dozens of videos of ghosts and hauntings and things like that. And lots of people obviously watch the stuff and are very tuned into it, and they're exposed to that. But until we do have that actual scientific verifiable proof in some way or another, it is just entertainment. I saw the other day one of the channels that I watch, it's well over 1 million views within a day on videos, and not to name names, not to poke fun, but half of the videos were easily debunkable. So I kind of actually want to spend some time doing that at some point here. It's just like going over some of these online videos and starting to debunk them. I think that would be a pretty fun and entertaining live stream to do. Because a lot of it is just, some of it's common sense stuff. Some of it, I don't think a lot of the videos that you see on TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that, I don't think a lot of those are necessarily intentionally manipulated to try and like fool people. I think it's literally just the people don't know what they're looking at themselves. And it's not anything maliciously done. It's just the way we are when we take a video of something and you look back at it years later. There's a lot of times that you'll see these videos where, okay, it could be a reflection in the glass. Sure, it looks like a face, but it definitely looks like it's a reflection. And then when you've got somebody that's just using that to try and generate content, I find it kind of questionable if it's intentionally done, but I don't think that's very often. We have one. Oh, got a new one. Cool. Well, thank you. The follows there. Yeah, I just joined Blue Sky, but I do not know how to use it right now. I also just I grabbed my usernames on those sites early on, but I just tried posting the other day, and I don't know how it works. I don't know how to find people on there. If you're lucky enough to find me, then God bless you. I hope that you enjoy your time on the internets over there because I don't know how it works, and I'm gonna avoid that until I do because it's not my bag right now. I do like my threads. That's easy. Yeah. I wish that we could do live streaming the threads. That'd be probably the better one for me. I do want to try and do YouTube. I just haven't set it up yet. I think that was the better interface. I've just done Twitch so often, it's easy for me to work with. There wasn't too much else in that other episode, but we definitely have more stuff to go over next week with the first cryptid that we're going to cover on the show. I'm looking forward to that. I think we'll have a good time with it. There's another thing I needed to find too. I forgot. There was one. New champ. Seriously. Alright, forget it. Because I was going to try and get into my newest. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So if I can get into this. Because I sent myself a couple of texts the other day that had some pretty interesting stories that I didn't want to give up on. And I'm gonna make sure that I save these for next show because I wanted to add these this episode and I just don't think I'm gonna have time in a half an hour. No matter how much I intend to. If there's any other time to do that, now would be the time. What do we have here? That's not it. Lord, there's way too much stuff from work in my inbox here. I hate it. I really, really do. Either way, I gotta get it into my regular account so that I'm not having to mess around with this every time that we do a show. Because the last time that I did this, it was the same way. Trying to find files, and then by the time that I actually do find them, it's, yeah. Either way, we had plenty of good stuff to do. What is that? Yeah. Anyways, I'm not going to ramble too much longer on that. I wanted to find the article because it was a pretty cool study. They had other stuff in that study that I thought was really fun because they were talking about how specifically in like New England residents, which I found interesting, Connecticut, uh, apparently the big popular cryptid nowadays is Mothman. He's very popular. The Jersey Devil is popular in parts of New England. And I guess in Connecticut, a lot of people believe in like they refer to it as well, I know a couple people that refer to them by different names, but basically what I would call it like a rake or a skinwalker or something, right? And apparently that's like a big one that people believe in Connecticut, which I found really weird because I don't know if I've ever heard of reports of that sort of stuff in Connecticut. I've been to Connecticut a few times. There's there's quite a bit of woods, but I wouldn't think of it as like that type of state. I guess maybe it's because I was in like Hartford, and that's not normal. Beautiful, beautiful, but I don't think that that's representative at all of the rest of Connecticut. Well, they had another one on the newest end of this whole thing where they were talking about the Jersey Devil one. I thought was really funny because 1 in 5 people believe in the New Jersey Devil, and when you got down to the end of the list, I really think that it was like 1% of them, because the way a lot of these is you're gonna scale 1 to 5, right? So the five being I absolutely like this is 100% I'm certain this is real, to like one being no, there's no chance. Okay, there was like a 1% that was like yes, it's 100% real, and I'm just imagining that was a guy that just had like a story to tell, and I wish that I could find that guy in the poll because it really feels like that would be the way that he would come up. There wasn't very many of those, and unfortunately, if we could ever get that, it's going to be wild. Oh yes, that was the other article. So CBN did a story day before the election. Okay, so this was well, then no, it was the week before the election, 10/28. Okay, so the headline goes: CBN reporting witches report their spells against Trump aren't working. He has a shield. It's a direct quote. Okay, so basically the story goes that they were trying to do spells to try and try and sway the election, right? Okay, but then they're reporting that like no matter what they were doing, they weren't seeing like any effects of them. And I don't know how they're able to tell that. I honestly don't know a witch that was doing it, so I don't know how they're able to tell the spells aren't working. But what I found funny is then they decided to shift to instead trying to affect have their spells affect the things around Trump, right? So instead of having to affect his shield, they said they couldn't penetrate his shield of prayers, as they called it, which I found wild. That there was like a whole like dichotomy in their heads, like a whole battle going on of the witches versus the evangelists, and it's just I'm just imagining because I was seeing Kevin Copeland the other day, and I got to imagine that if that was on his radar, he had to have been going absolutely batshit crazy over this. But either way, I found the whole thing to be kind of amusing, not to get too political on it, because obviously there is a whole discussion to be had of um, the reasons that witches would be so concerned and things like that. I understand. Either way, though, I found it kind of entertaining. I know they could have they could have had that on their shoulders, though. If that had gone that way, we never would have heard the end of it. The witches would have that would have been it. Instead, now it's just the we're the daughters of the witches you couldn't burn or whatever, and unfortunately, that didn't pan out. I was hoping. um, Either way, though, yeah. So in about a half an hour, I think 8 o'clock's about a good cutoff time for now. Anyways, Flat Earth is dumb. That's gonna be Gary. Um, he literally started a TikTok account specifically for the sake of fighting with Flat Earth people, and I find it riotous. I would absolutely I'd love to get him on a show sometime and just talk to him about that because I've seen it when he goes on TikTok and he just argues in the comment section on Facebook, but he gets banned so much on Meta platforms. TikTok kind of lets him go a little more. I do need to start posting on TikTok. I got my kid to show me how it works the other day. I'm old. I'm 132 and I don't know how TikTok works and I'm scared. But I'm trying to figure it out. So sometime soon I'll probably post some stuff on there, short form stuff. I don't want to do anything longer than a minute, but I thought it'd be interesting. Next week we'll have our first cryptid. I'm ready to do a few of those because I got a book this summer that I'm really interested in telling a bunch of stories from and doing some videos from, maybe, um, by Christopher Packard. It's a book of mythical creatures of Maine. So that alone is quite the quite the guide. We also had a new report of a cryptid the other day that I was reading too that I'm hoping to do soon, but I actually want to try and interview somebody about it because I think it would be more fun to have a little interaction compared to it just being me talking about that one, at least for the podcast portion. I'll still do a video on it, but I definitely want to have a guest on the podcast to discuss a couple of the big stories that have been going on because I think that it's needed. Like, there's so many of the Bar Harbor ghost ones I don't want to touch myself. I'd really rather have somebody else that, because there's a whole historical society down there that does so much work with it. It'd be kind of negligent to not talk to them. Not that I can't cover it, just I don't want to do it by myself. The the whole thing with Ghostport there is because that was, I've been there enough times, and that's a pretty easy one to, cover a lot of the legends in that town. But Bar Harbor and Acadia in particular, the island itself, they call it, it has so many haunted places. It's crazy. And don't it's surprising because a lot of them, it's such a picturesque and beautiful island. And some of the places that you find out, you'd be staying there. I was at an inn, and I remember like being at the inn for a snowstorm or something like that. We were staying in town, okay, and then I hear from one of the other guests, like, oh yeah, 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 like this place used to be a morgue, like it used to be a mortuary, and if you go downstairs to the um like where they had like a little spa where you could go and get a massage and stuff. I guess there was a spa, like a little room where they had a massage table set up and you could get a massage, but in the next like little alcove over from that, there was literally still the door that used to go to the crematorium, and the whole building was haunted as hell. And yeah, I stayed there a couple of times and it was really fun. I would love to do an episode on that, but again, I want to get something actually in person for that. I think that would be fun. And I don't know. The cryptid one's coming up. I think people will enjoy. I'll see if it does anything weird to the algorithm or anything like that where I'm switching gears, but hopefully it won't be too messed up because we haven't really hit a stride yet. So, yeah. Anyways, I'm gonna probably post this up to the normal platforms later tonight, and I do enjoy talking to y'all. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the video on Nellie Butler. There's butlers all over the place up here. There's like one of like five families in the area that like you always know at least one or two of them. This is we have like Butlers, Jordans, Sinclairs, and there's like two other ones that Gott's, another one where just everybody in the neighborhood at least has like one of those next to them at a given point in time. It's just one of those areas. And I was surprised to find out that more people didn't know about that haunting because honestly, I thought it was pretty cool. It's weird, it's creepy. I don't know if I like the implications of some of it because it's pretty dark. There's definitely some manipulation from this supposed spirit. There were apparently a few people in the town that were saying that it was to do with a demonic entity, but I couldn't find like anybody specific. It was just kind of like, oh, people like vaguely thought she might have been possessed. And yeah, for the time, I'm sure there was at least a couple. No surprise there. I'm surprised, honestly, that there was that many people that were willing to talk about it there. Because, I mean, back in those days, yeah, it was 100 years after the really crazy stuff was going on in Europe, but I still think it was fresh in people's minds. I don't know. we'll see. Anyways, gonna probably next week do little, a little, a little different of a setup to the stream, I think, because I'm gonna do some just some actual live video stuff. I think that would be fun, at least for a portion of it. So that'd be for the YouTube stuff, and then I'll probably still do the audio podcast because I think that's fun. I think it's gonna be something to keep up with, just so we can have more opportunity for actual dialogue about stuff that doesn't fit into the videos and everything. And we'll see how that goes. I don't want to overdo that stuff because I mean everybody's got podcasts, right? Mm. Anyways, so yeah, thank you for listening. You can check us out on Spotify, give us a follow on there, like and subscribe on YouTube if you get the opportunity. Definitely hit me up on Threads. I got a couple of messages earlier from somebody that I'm talking to about possibly going on their show. I thought that'd be kind of fun. I listened to their stuff and I thought it was interesting, telling some Canadian spooky tales. I know how to tell a good ghost story. Anyways, this has been the Reverend Redbeard. Thank you for listening to the Acadia After Dark podcast. We'll be back next week about the same time as usual. And Monday, look for the new YouTube video. We'll be talking about our first cryptid. It's a Maine specific one. It's our most popular one according to a couple of different sources. So I think people enjoy it. Anyways, y'all have a good one. Talk soon. Stay safe.